Our town, our TV. Amherst City Cable.
March 9th, regular meeting of Amherst City Council come to order. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Wasilk? Here. Mr. Winarski?
Here.
Mr. Miller?
Present.
Mr. Janik?
Here.
Mr. Bukovac?
Here.
Mr. Goodell?
Here.
Mr. Van Chern?
Here.
We'll stand for the prayer by Chaplain Wasilk and remain standing for the pledge of the flag by Sergeant at Arms Bukovac.
Will you bow with me, please? Gracious God, thank you for the warmth of this sunny day. Bless this meeting tonight. Keep us all within your love and care. Guide our thoughts, guide our hearts, and guide and guard our tongues. And now may the words of our mouths and the meditations of our heart be acceptable in your sight, O Lord, our rock and our Redeemer. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag
Of
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Move on to item 4, the consent agenda.
Minutes of the regular council meeting held February 23rd, 2015. Minutes of the Finance Committee meeting held March 2nd, 2015. Minutes of the Technology Committee meeting held March 2nd, 2015.
Mr. Miller.
Move to accept the consent agenda as read.
Mr. Goodell.
Second.
Motion is second on the floor to accept the consent agenda as read. Are there any comments? Roll call vote, please.
Mrs. Wasilk?
Yes.
Mr. Winarski?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Mr. Janik?
Yes.
Mr. Bukovac?
Yes.
Mr. Goodell?
Yes.
Mr. Van Chern?
Yes.
Motion carries. Move on to item 5. Acknowledge with the public pertaining to items on tonight's agenda. Anyone wishing to speak on anything that is on tonight's agenda? Now we'll move on to item 6, ordinances and resolutions, first reading. Item A.
An ordinance authorizing the mayor to enter into 2 memoranda of understanding with the Lorraine County Commissioners for countywide public safety data sharing solutions and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Van Chern.
Move to send 6A onto the second reading.
Oh, we're in
Pardon me, move to
emergency,
suspend
please.
council rules so that 6A can be passed on its first reading.
Thank you. Mr. Goodell.
Second.
Motion is second on the floor to suspend council rules on item A so may be passed on the first reading. Are there any comments? Roll call vote, please.
Mrs. Wasilk?
Yes.
Mr. Winarski?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Mr. Janik?
Yes.
Mr. Bukovac?
Yes.
Mr. Goodell?
Yes.
Mr. Van Chern?
Yes.
Motion carries. Mr. Winarski.
Motion to adopt.
Mr. Goodell.
Second.
Motion is second on the floor to adopt. Roll call vote, please.
Mrs. Wasilk?
Yes.
Mr. Winarski?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Mr. Janik?
Yes.
Mr. Bukovac?
Yes.
Mr. Goodell?
Yes.
Mr. Van Chern?
Yes.
Motion carries.
It's ordinance number O-15-9.
Item B.
An ordinance authorizing and directing the Safety Service Director to award a contract for the replacement of 15 kV electrical distribution lines and to authorize the expenditure of additional funds for such purpose and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Miller.
Thank you, Mr. President. Move to take item 6B to the floor with an emergency. If we can suspend council rules, that'd be fantastic.
Thank you. Mr. Janik.
Second.
Motion is second on the floor to suspend council rules on item B so may be passed on the first reading. Are there any comments? Roll call vote, please.
Mrs. Wasilk?
Yes.
Mr. Winarski?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Mr. Janik?
Yes.
Mr. Bukovac?
Yes.
Mr. Goodell?
Yes.
Mr. Van Chern?
Yes.
Motion carries. Ms. Wasilk.
Move to adopt.
Mr. Winarski.
I'll second that.
Motion is second on the floor to adopt. Roll call.
Mrs. Wasilk?
Yes.
Mr. Winarski?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Mr. Janik?
Yes.
Mr. Bukovac?
Yes.
Mr. Goodell?
Yes.
Mr. Van Chern?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Ordinance O-15-10.
Move on to item 7. Ordinances and resolutions, second reading. We have none. Item 8, ordinances and resolutions, third reading. We have none. Item 9, miscellaneous acknowledgement of the public. Anyone wishing to speak on any item? Mr. Goodell.
I just wanted to take a moment and thank the administration and the road crews for taking care of some of the potholes that we've had through the city. I know there's quite a few more that need to be addressed, but considering the amount that are out there and what I've seen, it's nice to see that you guys are on top of it. Thank you. That's all.
Anyone else? That completes item 9. Move on to item 10, agenda requests and committee meeting schedules.
I have two, Mr. President. They're for finance. The first is A-15-12, update City of Amherst investment policy to reflect changes in ORC Section 135. And the second is A-15-13, authorize the city treasurer to enter into a discretionary investment agreement with Meter Investment Management, and that is complete.
Thank you. Finance, Ms. Pasilk?
I have two items. A-15-12, update City of Amherst investment policy to reflect changes in the Ohio Revised Code, Section 135. And A-15-13, authorize the city treasurer to enter into a discretionary investment agreement with Meter Investment Management. And that is complete. And I wish to call that for Monday the 16th at 7 a.m.
Thank you, Ms. Pasilk.
Oh,
That's
PM,
cool.
I'm sorry.
It's okay, we'll be here.
Time change, I totally mixed up.
12 hours.
7 p.m. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Pasilk. Building and Lands, Mr. Winarski.
Nothing at this time, Mr. President.
Thank you. Streets, Mr. Bukovac.
Streets has no items, please cancel.
Thank you. Community Development, Mr. Janik.
No items, Mr. President, please cancel.
Thank you. Executive, Mr. Goodell.
Nothing at this time, Mr. President. Please cancel.
Thank you. Ordinance, Mr. Miller.
No items, please cancel.
Thank you. Utilities, Mr. Miller.
No items as well, please cancel.
Thank you. Recycle, Mr. Janik.
No items at this time, Mr. President, please cancel.
Thank you. Technology, Mr. Bukovac.
No items, please cancel.
Thank you. Police and Fire, Mr. Van Kuren.
Nothing, sir. Cancel, please.
Thank you. That completes item 10. Move on to item 11, reports of administration.
Mr. Ramsey?
The income taxes are due April 15th, and the February reports have been distributed. That's the end of my report.
Mr. Kukuka?
The February cash position report has been distributed and published in the report.
Mr. Pecora?
No report, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Costello?
Just want to add to Mr. Goodell's statement, the road crews are out there doing a good job replacing the potholes and patching them. So I guess pun intended here, please give them a break. If you see them out there working, slow down, let them do their job safely. Another quick statement, thanks for passing legislation on the electric line. It gives us a chance to schedule the pre-construction meeting and get that project going. Thank you. End of report.
Thank you. Just one item on the street program. We're still working that because we believe what we're going to submit to council this year is we've already spent about $450,000 of our $1 million that we normally spend every year. So that means we've got $500,000 to spend yet. We believe what we're going to spend on is intermittent repairs of the streets rather than go in and do one whole street. Since we have, the streets are getting in such bad condition, we think right now we're still developing the program, but we think we're going to come back to council and submit a plan of about $450,000, $500,000 worth of intermittent repairs on the street. We know we'll get more bang for the buck in terms of getting more streets patched that way. Since we do have two major projects, as you know, 58 and Cooper Foster Park. So we'll be submitting that within a month and get it ready for council approval so we can get the plans drawn up and passed and start after school's out. End of report, Mr. President.
Thank you. Mr. Miller.
Yes, just a quick question regarding our safety service director, and I apologize for not bringing this up under miscellaneous but you'd stated that they're continuing to work on it. They've done a fine job. Mr. Murphy at Utilities had stated that to call 988-4224 if you find that there's an unusually large pothole that could cause problems with vehicles or traffic. And the second thing is, do we have something in place to move on the Middle Ridge Elyria Avenue intersection? There is a crater-sized hole in the middle of that intersection that needs addressed immediately if at all possible.
Yeah, we're aware of that, and we got to decide what we're going to do to it so we just don't throw a bunch of patchwork in. We want to fix it and try and fix it permanently. So we're aware of it, and we'll take care of it as soon as we can.
Much
to make sure it's
appreciated.
right.
Thank you, Mr. Matt. Thank you, Mr. Costello.
And that phone number is the utilities office. Just in
Right.
case somebody forgets the number, they can look that up in the phone book.
Thank you. With that, I move to accept the reports of administration.
Mr. Bookback.
Second, please.
Motion and second on the floor to accept the reports of administration. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Mr. Bookback.
I'd like to make a motion to adjourn.
Mr. Janik.
Second.
Motion and second on the floor to adjourn. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? We are adjourned at 7:41.
Serving Amherst and Amherst Township, your hometown television station, Amherst City Cable.